April 10, 2022. San Diego, California. A family gathers around a table, candles lit, laughing, celebrating a daughter turning 24 years old. There's a photo from that day, Felicia Johnson smiling with the people who loved her most. Nobody in that room could have known it would become one of the last happy photographs anyone would ever take of her. 5 days later, she boards a flight to Houston, Texas. 10 days after that, her family is holding her cell phone covered in blood, found tossed off the side of a road near a park. She was never seen alive again. Before we get into it, if you're new here, welcome to Case Watch. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you don't miss any of our deep dives into cases like this one. Okay, let's get into it. This is the story of Felicia Johnson and the man Houston police say murdered her, dismembered her, and vanished into thin air. His name is Chukwuebuka Nwobodo, and as of right now, he is still out there somewhere, a wanted fugitive who investigators believe may have escaped to the other side of the world and never faced justice. Let's set the scene. Houston, Texas, is one of the largest cities in the country, sprawling, diverse, and unfortunately known as one of the biggest hubs for human trafficking in the entire United States, according to the Department of Justice. That reputation matters here, because for weeks almost everyone involved in this case, her family, activists, even investigators, believed Felicia had fallen victim to trafficking. The truth turned out to be something different, and honestly something more calculated. Felicia Johnson, also known by the name Felicia Marie, was 24 years old from San Diego. She had just celebrated her birthday with family on April 10th. 5 days later, on April 13th, she flew to Houston. Her father, Kevin Johnson, later said she was there partly to celebrate that birthday further, and partly to make some extra money. She checked into a hotel in Houston's medical center area. Then, on the night of April 15th, she went to a club called Cover Girls, an adult entertainment venue off West Little York Road on the city's northwest side, hoping to get hired there. She didn't get the job. According to community activist Quan LX, who later got involved in the search, her Uber ride was running late that night, and an unidentified customer from the club offered to give her a ride instead. That's the last confirmed sighting of Felicia in public. Before we go further, let's talk about who Felicia actually was. Her father describes her as someone who could light up a room, a trait he says she inherited from her grandmother. She was an aspiring model and dancer, someone who loved hair, makeup, anything glamorous. He's called her sweet, kind-hearted, generous to a fault. Physically, she stood about 5'4", around 150 pounds, with long black hair, brown eyes, a dark complexion, and a large tattoo of a butterfly with 2 roses on her right shoulder. Now, the man on the other side of this story. Chukwuebuka Nwobodo, 28 years old, Nigerian, living in Houston. He wasn't unknown to police before this case. Back in November of 2020, a woman accused him of trying to sexually assault her inside his vehicle. She said she managed to break free after he chased her down and grabbed her wrist. That case was eventually dismissed after she declined to press forward with charges. But his name, his address, all of it stayed on file, and it would come back into play once investigators started connecting dots almost 2 years later. Here's where things get chilling. Investigators would later determine that after Felicia was turned away from Cover Girls that night, she posted an advertisement on an online escort website. That's how she and Nwobodo connected, communicating through Snapchat. According to charging documents, they agreed to meet, with Nwobodo allegedly agreeing to pay her $500 for the encounter. In the early morning hours of April 16th, Nwobodo requested an Uber to pick Felicia up from her hotel. Records later showed that ride was headed to an apartment complex on Windchase Boulevard, a place where Nwobodo used to live years earlier, before moving out in March of 2020. Surveillance footage allegedly caught him driving from his current apartment over to that former complex around the same time her Uber arrived. Someone matching Felicia's description got out of that car and walked toward the building, where Nwobodo was reportedly waiting for her. From there, he brought her back to his actual current apartment, less than 2 miles away, on South Richmond Avenue. That is the last confirmed trace of Felicia Johnson alive. 12 hours after she stopped responding, her worried family back in California asked a friend in Houston to help track her phone using location sharing that was still active. What they found, discarded off the roadway near Bear Creek Pioneers Park, was her cell phone. Fully charged. Tossed roughly 6 feet off an embankment into the grass, like someone had thrown it from a moving car. And on it specks of blood. 12 hours. That's how long it took for Kevin Johnson to get on a plane after learning his daughter had vanished. He touched down in Houston and went straight to where her phone had been found, at Bear Creek Pioneers Park. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Nothing turned up. Texas Search, a volunteer search and rescue organization, spent hours combing through the park, then came back and did it again for 3 more days. Still nothing. In those early days, the case was being treated almost entirely as a missing persons investigation, and honestly, not urgently enough, according to Felicia's family. Kevin Johnson said it took 5 days before Houston police even began actively investigating her disappearance. Community activist Quan LX, who stepped in to help the family, was blunt about it. He said this was the 4th case in 6 months involving a missing black woman where he felt HBD had dragged its feet, only picking up the pace once he went public with it. He and the family were pushing hard for the same urgency they felt would have been given to a missing white woman. By late April, Crime Stoppers of Houston had put up a $5,000 reward for information. A vigil was held at the spot where her phone was found. Her father stood there and said, "I'm not going nowhere. I'm here. Daddy's here." By April 28th, the case had picked up enough attention that the FBI joined the search alongside HBD. At this point, almost everyone believed Felicia had been trafficked. That theory made sense on the surface. Houston is one of the largest trafficking hubs in the country. She'd been at a club, she didn't get the job, and by every account available at the time, she left with an unknown man. Her father and investigators both leaned into that theory publicly for weeks. But behind the scenes, detectives were chasing something different. They pulled Uber records tied to the ride that picked Felicia up from her hotel that night. That single piece of data cracked the case wide open. The Uber had been requested not by Felicia, but by someone else, a man named Chukwuebuka Nwobodo. From his name, they got his phone number and email address. When they ran his name through their system, an old file came up, the November 2020 sexual assault report, along with an address. Using that address and the ride information, detectives pieced together a route. The Uber picked Felicia up from her hotel and dropped her at an apartment complex on Windchase Boulevard, a complex Nwobodo used to live in years before. Surveillance footage from the area appeared to show Nwobodo driving from his current residence over to that old complex around the same time. Then footage allegedly showed someone matching Felicia, walking toward the building where he was parked, waiting. On May 13th, just about a month after Felicia disappeared, police executed a search warrant on Nwobodo's apartment and vehicle. What they found was disturbing. Inside his apartment, they said there were blood stains throughout, on the hallway floor right outside the bathroom, and across the entire bedroom. Testing reportedly showed the blood was a very strong match to Felicia's DNA profile. In his car, a silver Honda Accord, they say they found a 9mm handgun, a large kitchen knife with a reagent test indicating blood on it, a shovel, loose latex gloves, and receipts for items that looked like they could have been used for cleanup. Police also seized his phone during that arrest. On it, they say they found a photograph of a deceased, dismembered woman, along with 3 additional photos of what appeared to be other deceased individuals. None of those images had metadata attached, so investigators couldn't immediately confirm who was in them or when they were taken. A police spokesperson later said they were never able to confirm whether the woman in that photo was Felicia. Now here's the part of this story that still doesn't sit right with a lot of people who followed it. With all of that evidence in hand, blood, weapons, a shovel, disturbing images, Nwobodo was detained, questioned, and then released. Houston police later explained that the May 13th search had been executed under what they called a pocket warrant, and that at the time, they simply didn't yet have enough for formal charges. So he walked free. While he was out, investigators kept digging, and what they uncovered from his internet activity is honestly the kind of detail that makes this case stick with people. Records show that starting just days after Felicia disappeared, searches tied to Nwobodo's Gmail account included things like whether bleach could destroy DNA, what bleach does to blood, and the most forested part of Houston. A week later, there were searches for how to delete browsing history completely, and for the cheapest places in the world to live on $1,000 a month. Around the same time, investigators say he searched how to plan a murder without getting caught, how to get away with murder, and even how to be a serial killer. In early May, just before his arrest, he was reportedly searching whether police can access a missing person's phone records or text messages after they're gone. Investigators also traced his bank records, which showed a $500 withdrawal from his Wells Fargo account on April 16, the same amount he'd allegedly agreed to pay Felicia over Snapchat. And surveillance footage from a Walmart and a Home Depot, captured on the 16th and 17th, allegedly showed him, with a bandaged hand, buying a mechanical saw, a flashlight, trash bags, gloves, and towels. He'd reportedly gone to get medical treatment for hand lacerations that same morning, claiming he'd cut himself opening boxes. With all of this laid out, Houston police formally charged Nwobodo with murder and tampering with evidence on June 9, 2022, in the 232nd State District Court. But by the time those charges were filed, he was already gone. He was officially declared a fugitive, and police believe, based on the evidence, that he killed Felicia inside his apartment, then disposed of her body within the next few days, along with disposing of her cell phone at Bear Creek Pioneers Park. For months after that, there was nothing. No sign of him. No sign of her. Her body still hadn't been found. Then, in February of 2023, nearly 10 months after she disappeared, a Texas Department of Transportation worker came across what looked like human bones in the Sam Houston National Forest, near an area called Flamingo Lakes off Highway 149. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office was called out, and the remains were sent for DNA sampling and dental record analysis. Less than a month later, in early March 2023, those dental records came back as a match. The remains belonged to Felicia Johnson. Officials described them as portions of her upper torso. There has never been a formal ruling on the exact cause of death, but the manner of death was officially presumed to be homicide. When her father got the news, he didn't respond with despair, he responded with something closer to resolve. He said finding her felt like she was, in his words, popping back from the grave for her own revenge, for her own justice, and that everything was going to come to the surface now. But even with her identified, the man accused of killing her was still nowhere to be found. Chukwuebuka Nwobodo has been a fugitive since June of 2022. That's over 4 years. No confirmed sightings. No arrest. No trial. He was formally charged with murder and tampering with evidence, but charges on paper mean nothing if the person facing them can't be found. So where is he? The leading theory, and the one investigators, journalists, and Felicia's own father have leaned into most, is that Nwobodo fled the country entirely, possibly back to Nigeria, where he has family. The United States does have an extradition treaty with Nigeria, which technically means if he's located there and confirmed, there is a legal pathway to bring him back. But confirming someone's location in another country, especially if that person has any support system helping them stay hidden, is an entirely different challenge than having a treaty on paper. Kevin Johnson, Felicia's father, has spoken publicly about just how frustrating that gap is. He said that if he ever got a solid tip on which village or region Nwobodo might be hiding in, he's considered every option available to him, working with police, hiring a private investigator or bounty hunter, even offering a reward specifically within Nigeria to get local eyes looking for him. That's the kind of thing a father says when the system he's relying on hasn't delivered, and he feels like he has to take matters into his own hands just to keep hope alive. There isn't really a competing suspect theory in this case, which honestly makes it a little different from a lot of unsolved cases we cover. The evidence against Nwobodo, the blood in his apartment matching Felicia's DNA, the items in his car, the disturbing photos on his phone, the Uber records, the incriminating internet searches, the withdrawal matching the amount he agreed to pay her, it all points in one direction. Investigators aren't searching for who did this. They know who they believe did it. What they don't have is him. What's stuck with a lot of people following this case is that chilling stretch of internet searches. Someone Googling how to be a serial killer, how to get away with murder, whether bleach destroys DNA, all within days of a young woman going missing after being in his apartment. Investigators and true crime followers alike have pointed to that pattern as something more calculated than a single moment of panic. It reads less like someone covering up an accident and more like someone actively studying how not to get caught. And then there's the detail that still bothers people the most. He was arrested once already on May 13th, with blood in his apartment, a shovel and knife in his car, and disturbing photos on his phone, and he was released. Whatever the legal reasoning behind that pocket warrant, it meant he had weeks of advance warning that police were closing in on him, weeks he very likely used to plan his disappearance before formal charges ever caught up to him. For Felicia's family, this has never really had a moment of closure, even after her remains were identified. Her father has spoken about the toll all of this has taken on him personally, dealing with depression, severe PTSD, high blood pressure, anxiety, all stemming from a case that's never actually been resolved in a courtroom. There's no trial to attend, no verdict to hear, no sentencing to give him even that difficult kind of finality. Just an open case file, and a man's name attached to it, somewhere out there unaccounted for. For the Houston community, this case became part of a larger, uncomfortable conversation about how missing persons cases involving Black women get treated, about whether they get the same urgency, the same media attention, the same resources as other cases. Quanell X was blunt about that at the time, and it's a criticism that's followed this case ever since. So here's where I want to leave you, because I think this case raises some questions worth sitting with. What does it say about a person that they can go from an ordinary daily life to searching how to be a serial killer within a matter of hours? Was this predatory and premeditated, someone who'd been capable of this for a long time and finally acted on it, or something that spiraled in real time, fueled by panic and a need for control once it started? And what do we owe someone like Kevin Johnson, a father who's done more independent digging into his daughter's case than some investigations manage, who's still out there 4 years later, still asking, still hoping someone somewhere knows something? If you know anything about the whereabouts of Chukwuebuka Nwobodo or anything connected to this case, you can contact the Houston Police Department's Homicide Division at 713-308-3600 or Crime Stoppers of Houston at 713-222-8477. There is still a reward on the table for information that leads somewhere real. If this case affected you the way it affected me putting this together, let us know in the comments what stood out to you most. And if you want more cases like this one, brought to you honestly, with real sourcing and no fluff, make sure you're subscribed here at Case Watch, with that bell turned on, so you don't miss what we cover next.